They were this close to making a really good movie. But the tiniest little things can screw it all up. What's up, ladies and gentlemen? My name is DJ CS. Welcome back to an all-new video here on my YouTube channel. In this video, we are, of course, going to be breaking down the movie that was Mortal Kombat, the reboot, the 2021 version, not the 1995 version. You can see it behind me. That's what we're talking about here in this video. Now, there will be a non-spoiler review. I'll try my best because it's kind of hard to talk about things sometimes when without spoiling stuff. And then there will be, of course, a spoiler review, and all in the same video. Non-spoiler first, spoiler afterwards. If you haven't seen the movie yet, I don't know what you're waiting for. You should definitely go and check it out. It is worth a watch at least, especially if you have HBO Max already. It's included with your subscription, so definitely check it out. It's been out for 3 weeks already. You should definitely have already watched it by now if you have intended to watch it. And a lot of people went and saw this in theaters, and it set like a pandemic record for the highest grossing box office since the pandemic has hit, with 20 some odd $1,000, which is kind of weak compared to what we were doing before the pandemic when we were in the hundreds of $1,000s, hundreds of millions of dollars. Actually, I think it was 23 million, so I stand corrected. 23 million, not 23,000. But still, even compared to hundreds of millions of dollars, that's a small scale. But like I said, we're in a pandemic still. A lot of theaters aren't open. And the fact that you can watch this from HBO Max really probably affected that as well. But this was the biggest release to HBO Max to date. The 3 days that in the weekend that it released, from Friday, Saturday, Sunday, it had more views than Justice League had, the Zack Snyder verse, the Zack Snyder cut of Justice League had in the weeks leading up to Mortal Kombat. So a lot of people were hyped for this movie, and a lot of people watched it, and myself included. And we're gonna review it and talk about what they got right and what they got wrong. So if you're new here, please subscribe and hit that notification bell. If you enjoy this video, go ahead and drop it a like. I would greatly appreciate that. With all that said and done, guys, let's get into this review. So just a little bit of backstory on me and my history with Mortal Kombat. I've played almost every single Mortal Kombat game. I think there's like 18 of them. There's some offshoots that I didn't play, like Mythology Sub-Zero, I think it was, and I don't know, there's a couple more, but I've played almost every single Mortal Kombat game. Shaolin Monks, DC versus Mortal Kombat, all the original versions. I didn't really play that much of Armageddon or Mortal Kombat 4, but I still played them nonetheless. So, and I've seen every live action adaptation of Mortal Kombat, the 1995 movie, the travesty from the 1997 sequel, the live action TV show they had, Mortal Kombat Conquest, the YouTube series Mortal Kombat Rebirth, the two seasons of that, which the first season was really good, second season was but I saw the pitch that they had for that 15-minute pitch that they wanted to do to kind of reboot Mortal Kombat. I didn't really like it, but it is what it is. It never really picked up. Anyway, it's what led into the YouTube series. But nonetheless, I am huge into the mythology of Mortal Kombat. I think it's great. It's great storytelling. It's simple storytelling, I'll be honest with you, but it's great storytelling too. And there's a lot to pick from. That being said, this movie failed to deliver on the mythology of Mortal Kombat. In all honesty, the overall story of the original 1995 movie was kind of better than the overall story of this 2021 version. And that's kind of saying a lot, because when the movie came out in 1995, they really only had one game to pick from, because Mortal Kombat 2 dropped in 95, I think it was. And I'm sure when they started making the movie, they really only had Mortal Kombat 1 to work with. And it wasn't really a deep mythology built like there is now 18 games later. So the fact that they really dropped the ball on certain things really boggles my mind, but it's Hollywood. It's what they do. They change things constantly. Some things I could overlook. Some things I just absolutely could not, because it just made no sense. When you change something, that's an easy tell. and it makes no sense for you to change it that way. And when you change a certain thing, it affects everything that you're going to do in the future, which, you know, from the get-go, or I'd say about halfway through this movie, I could tell that they made this movie with more movies in mind. And to me, that is not the way of going about movies. Ever since Marvel, everybody wants to, lay Easter eggs for future movies. But you need to put out a good movie first. DC had that problem where they're like, well, we're planning, 10 movies ahead. No. Plan for this movie, make this movie good. And then you can make other movies, Then you can work on building your universe and whatnot. But this movie, I've actually watched it 3 times now. First time I watched it, I hated it. I just couldn't, there's certain things I couldn't get over. I'm just like, why? Why would you do that? It makes no sense. Second time I watched it, I actually enjoyed it more because I knew what I was getting into. Third time I watched it was basically to make sure my notes were right. So when I come in here and I talk to you guys, I'm not looking like an idiot. So, I try to, I probably do look like an idiot. Who the hell knows? But just so I kind of sort of know what I'm talking about. So, overall, I did enjoy the movie. The fight scenes, most of them were pretty good. Some of them were kind of subpar, basic. The blood and the gore and the violence was really good and spot on for a Mortal Kombat movie. The overall story, again, was kind of weak to me because, and this may be a bit of a spoiler, but I know the producer has already, or the director, whoever it is, has already come out and talked about it, so it's not much of a spoiler. But basically, it seems like a prequel movie. A prequel to what he wants to do in the next movie. And that definitely comes across in the movie. The acting, for the most part, was definitely good in certain areas. There were some weak points. It wasn't really bad acting. Like I watched Mystery Science Theater 3000. That's some bad acting. A lot of the movies in there. There was just sometimes where it just certain things didn't mesh. The actor who played Kano, Josh Lawson, was amazing. Probably the best part of this entire movie was his acting and just the quick whims and the things he would say and do just really were spot on and amazing and great. Joe Taslim as Sub-Zero was great. A lot of his acting he had to do with his eyes because he has the face mask on, and he delivered a lot of, I don't want to say emotion, but just reactions and stuff with his eyes, and it was really really good. As far as the other actors, I feel like they really nailed a lot of the characters. They look like the characters, which is great, which is what you need. But some of them definitely could have been built on more, especially the villains. We really didn't learn much at all about the villains and what their goals are, what their mindset is. And as we've learned from movies like the Marvel series, good villains make good movies. When you understand where the villain is coming from, when you almost sympathize with the villain, when you can understand why the villain is doing what he's doing, it kind of puts you, what side are you on? Are you on the good guy side or the bad guy side? A lot of people, I mean, I'm wearing Joker. The Joker movie, as crazy as it is, made people sympathize for the Joker. People understood where Thanos was coming from when he said, "I'm trying to save you people by killing half of the universe. I'm trying to save you people." But nonetheless, I felt like that's where this movie really kind of dropped the ball, and other things as I'll get into the spoiler. Overall, I'll give this movie probably a C plus, just because the action was good, the acting in certain moments were good, and there's little tiny things that they did that was just like, yes, that's awesome, but then there's also little tiny things that they did, and I'm just like, no, that's terrible. So it kind of balanced it out. Like I said, I give it a C plus. In comparison to, the original Mortal Kombat movie, because I don't want to compare it to Marvel or DC or any of that stuff. Let's compare it to itself. Let's compare it to Mortal Kombat, the first 1995 movie. It is better. It has better action, better CG, of course, uh, better acting, definitely. But the story to me in the 1995 movie was better, and I'll explain why when I get to the spoiler section. But overall, like I said, this movie, it did really well. It was successful. They're gonna make a sequel, but my problem with that is that a lot of people, it's gonna be fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, or fool me once, shame on you. I feel like George Bush right now. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Because sure, a lot of people were hyped for this movie. A lot of people saw the movie, but are they gonna want to see a sequel? It's currently sitting at an 86% on Rotten Tomatoes. So a lot of people definitely liked it. However, the critics' reviews aren't as promising. It's about 55% for the critics. And some people, the critic census says largely for fans of the source material, but far from fatally flawed. Mortal Kombat Mortal Kombat revives the franchise in appropriately violent fashion. And then the audience says the acting is spotty and the storytelling is a bit rushed. But if you can turn your brain off for a while, Mortal Kombat delivers plenty of graphic violence and intense fighting scenes for fans of the video game series. Now, I agree with both of these. However, the part where it says largely for fans of the source material, because fans of the source material are going to watch this and go, no. There's certain things that I'll talk about when we get to the spoiler review that they're just going to be like, what are you doing? That makes no sense. But I mean, it does have an 86% audience score, which is really, really good. It's really high up there. Like, for example, the other things that are out right now that are about that high is, let's see, I don't know any of these movies. Marvel's Avengers Endgame is currently sitting at a 90% audience score and a 94% tomato meter, whatever that means. I guess that's like the critics review. But so 86% is not that much lower than a 90%, which Endgame had. But I definitely agree with a lot of these things where it said it feels a bit rushed, because the movie is overall about an hour and 50 minutes. And you get an actual like hour and 40 minutes of movie, and then so many minutes of credits. I feel like if this was half an hour longer, they could have really fleshed out more of the characters and done more, and it could have been a better movie. Definitely, once you get, I say probably about halfway through the movie, it definitely feels rushed. Like, okay, the movie's about to end. We need to, get through scenes, get through scenes, get through scenes. And then the cutting between the fights really kind of bothered me too, because you couldn't really focus on one fight at a time, and there were multiple fights going on, which I understand, but if we could have just focused on one fight at a time, we could have seen more of the choreography and stuff that's involved, and maybe some of the fights would have looked better. But that was kind of, like I said, certain fights. There are definitely some fights where it's just that's what you're seeing, and it's awesome. But there are moments where it lacks in the action and the choreography involved with martial arts and fight scenes. So overall, I definitely would recommend you going and watching this movie, because, like I said, if you have HBO Max, why the hell not? It's a movie. It's a movie to watch, and it's a decent movie. But we are going to get into the spoiler section now. So if you haven't seen the movie, excuse me, I got a hiccup. If you haven't seen the movie yet, stop watching, save this into your bookmarks, and come back later and watch the rest of this. So we're basically going to go through a lot of this, scene for scene, starting with the beginning. We open up in 1617, feudal Japan, 404 years, from now, or earlier from now, before now. And one thing I really enjoyed was the fact that Scorpion doesn't speak English, except for later when he says, "Get over here," and stuff like that. But he speaks very, very, very little English, which is great, because someone from 1617 feudal Japan wouldn't speak English. In fact, when Bihan shows up later, he's speaking Chinese. Scorpion doesn't understand him, which I thought was a really nice touch. One thing that bothered me about this, though, the fighting was great. The Hanzo Hasashi going around with the spear and the rope. It was actually a garden tool, but taking out the Lin Kuei members, great fight scene. We see Sub-Zero come in, and he has powers already. We see him, his hand starts to turn to ice, and we see like blood forming in his ice, and it looks like it hurts him, almost like Wolverine when he pulls out his claws. He says it hurts, and this whole bullshit with the Arcana that happens later in the movie. If you only get your Arcana after you get the dragon logo, how the hell did Sub-Zero have powers already? Now, to the fans, it makes sense because the Lin Kuei practice, I think it's chiromancy or something like that. They practice this ice ability. They've learned it. So it would make sense. But they ruined it when they introduced this Arcana bullshit that's how you get your powers. But he already had his powers before he got the dragon logo from Scorpion. How did he have powers? Do you see, it's just something that really irked my mind with that Arcana nonsense. And maybe he had a dragon logo before, but it was kind of, it wasn't mentioned, but it was kind of, like, it was kind of like insisted that he got his dragon logo from killing Scorpion. There's a lot of, trying to gather my thoughts here. Like I said, the fight scene was really amazing. Their clothing matched the time of feudal Japan. They weren't in like ninja gear, so that was a really nice touch. And then of course, after Bihan kills Hanzo Hasashi, the Lin Kuei just disappear, like almost instantly. Because then you start to hear Hanzo's daughter, who was hidden in the bottom of the floor, she starts crying, and there's no Lin Kuei around. Hanzo starts to crawl towards. He dies. He goes up in flames, and all you see is burn marks on the ground and ashes, and then Raiden comes and takes the baby. Another thing about the dragon logo. If you only get it by defeating someone who has it, by killing someone who has it, how is it then passed down through the generations of Hanzo Hasashi's family? Passed through his blood, through his kin. If Bihan got it by killing Hanzo Hasashi, how did his descendants get it? How does Cole get it in the future? 350 years from now, from then. It makes no sense to me. So, again, that whole Arcana bullshit and the dragon logo was really something that just fucked with me in this movie and really made me hate it the first time I watched it. Second time, I was over it. And like I said, I knew I was getting it in for, so I enjoyed it more. But like I said, Jotasm was great. There's a scene where Hanzo shoots the spear and it hits the tree, but then Joe kind of leans into it, and Hanzo pulls it back and it cuts him. There's a scene later where the same thing happens, but now this time Sub-Zero catches it. It's a great callback to that scene earlier, that fight scene. Like he says basically, "I remember you." Even it's been 400 years, which was one thing that bothered me. So Scorpion's been in hell this time. It would have been great to know what he was going through in hell, how he transformed basically from Hanzo Hasashi to Scorpion. But this whole time, Bihan's been alive for over 400 years. Now, in Outworld, they have all kinds of rejuvenation chambers and ways to rejuvenate people, ways to bring people back to life. But one of the most common ways is being the Mortal Kombat champion. If you're the Mortal Kombat champion, basically you're not immortal, but you don't age until you lose the Mortal Kombat tournament. At least that's how it used to be. I don't know if it's still that way. They don't really mention that much about it these days. But our Mortal Kombat champion is Goro in this movie, the 9-time Mortal Kombat champion. So how was Sub-Zero kept alive all that time? It could have been Shang Tsung. Shang Tsung could have been doing his sorcery. So there's a lot of that. But again, if they fleshed out some of these details, it would have helped out a lot. Then we see We meet Cole Young, and he sucks. He can't win a fight. Jax mentions that he beat Ed Tobias for a championship some time ago. Ed Tobias is obviously an Easter egg for Ed Boon and Johnny Tobias, I think it is, the creators of Mortal Kombat, the game. But he used to be a good fighter. He isn't a good fighter anymore. He is terrible. He's trash. But he's got a Mortal Kombat logo, so he's a chosen one. And we go through all this stuff with Sub-Zero trying to get to him. I don't know why Sub-Zero's taking so long to try to kill him. Why didn't he come after him when he was like a kid? Or, it just, it's one of those things, if you could go back in time and kill Hitler when he was a baby, would you? And then that's the thing with the dragon tattoo. If it gets passed down through generations, why doesn't Cole's daughter have one? Is it only through males? And if that's the case, how did Hanzo Hasashi's daughter get one? How did Hanzo Hasashi's daughter have one to pass it down? It's just these holes in the plot screw things up sometimes, for me personally. And this is just all my opinion. So, like I said, we meet Cole, and he ends up getting protected by Jax from Sub-Zero. Jax ends up fighting Sub-Zero, and there's a part where Sub-Zero is using his ice to break down Jax. I don't mean where he freezes his arm. There's like a part where he slides his arm over one shoulder, slides his hand over the other shoulder with ice, and like burns him and like breaks down like the interior of his muscles or something like that to set up for the moment where he grabs his arm and freezes him. I thought that was really dope, a really nice touch, for the fight scene. And then, of course, where he breaks his arms, that I can overlook that because Jax's arms have been broken and destroyed and done so many different ways. It's fine to change that. That's fine. And so and Jax informs Cole that, the marking isn't a birthmark. It's you were chosen. And the whole thing about the chosen, and we found out later that there's all kinds of Earthrealm champions, but we don't see any of these Earthrealm champions. Sure, Sonya tells us, we see an Easter egg for Nightwolf and for Kotal Khan, but Kotal Khan's not an Earthrealm champion. He's an Outworld person. But where are all these other champions? It's mentioned that there's few champions left, but where are they all? Liu Kang is supposed to go out and seek them, but the only champions we see are Kano, Cole Young, Jax, Liu Kang, and Kung Lao. Where's everybody else for Earthrealm? If there's so many other champions, why didn't you go get them? That was another thing that kind of bothered me. But then, like I said, we see the Easter eggs, and Cole pointed out that Mortal Kombat was spelled wrong because a lot of people who don't know anything about Mortal Kombat say that combat is spelled wrong. I thought that was a cute little touch. And then we meet Kano, the best part of this whole movie. Josh Lawson as Kano, spot on. So great. Hilarious. His quick wibs that he would say throughout the movie were just great. And when we introduce him, or when we meet him, he's just, 0 to 100. Perfect. But before we meet Kano, there's a scene where Shang Tsung and Mileena are talking in Outworld, I assume. And it looks like they're digging somewhere, but Shang Tsung is like, his face is all dirty and stuff, and Mileena's kind of dirty. There's no precedent of what is going on in this scene. It looks like they're digging to Raiden's temple, but how do you dig from Outworld to Earthrealm? Like, it just makes no sense to me. The fact that nothing was really ever fleshed out about Outworld and Shang Tsung and why they're doing this. I understand that they mentioned that they've won 9 tournaments and they have to win 10 to invade Outworld and all that other stuff, but we don't understand. They don't tell us anything about Shang Tsung. I think they mentioned he is a sorcerer. I think Raiden calls him a sorcerer, but we never see him shapeshift. The only powers we see is him steal Kung Lao's soul, which I'll talk about in a bit, but we don't know anything about Shang Tsung. We don't know anything about Mileena. It was never, nothing was ever explained about her. Nothing was ever explained about any of the Outworld champions, other than Goro being, 9-time Mortal Kombat champion. And the fact that we don't know why Shang Tsung. This isn't Shang Tsung's mission to do this. It's Shao Kahn's. He's working for Shao Kahn, and Shao Kahn was never mentioned in this whole movie, which is mind-boggling that you can't even mention the guy who you work for. Shao Kahn was mentioned for Goro because that is his race, that is his people. He's a Shokan, but Shao Kahn was never mentioned. He was shown twice, image of him in like one of the fight scenes, and then of course the statue, but he was never mentioned. And like I said, just there's no backstory on Shang Tsung and why he's doing this, so we don't get that in-depth reason as to why these villains are doing what they're doing, why the bad guys are doing what they're doing, which could have really helped this movie if they gave it just another 30 minutes. Who wouldn't sit there for a 2-hour and 10-minute Mortal Kombat movie? I sat there for a 3-hour Avengers movie and a 4-hour, reboot of Justice League, basically. So definitely would have sat there for a 2-hour and 10-minute Mortal Kombat movie. But like I said, Kano, best part of this movie. There's in that scene where Melina and Shang Tsung are talking, he mentions send the reptilian Syzoth. Now I'm really glad this wasn't actually described as reptile. He could have said send reptile, but he said send the reptilian Syzoth. So there's still a chance for reptile to come back in future movies. And in the trailer, I didn't like the way the creature looked because it just looked kind of like a lichen from the Underworld movies or whatever. But in the actual movie, the CG was really done well on this character. A hell of a lot better than the 1995 reptile we got. If this is supposed to be reptile, even though it's not because they called him Syzoth. But who knows with these movies. So during that fight scene, it's an okay fight scene. I mean, you're fighting a CG monster, so there's not a whole lot you can do. But there is a part where Sonya's throwing knives at him and hits Kano in the leg with his own knife, and the way Kano reacts is just great. He calls it fucking poetry. I thought that was really great. Like I said, everything Kano did was great, plain and simple. He played him to a T, and he worked for the highest bidder, like he should be. And just the way he reacted to everything, like when he saw Liu Kang's powers, and he just like so overjoyed, like that's a fucking fireball, And then the scene, of course, where Kung Lao and Liu Kang are busting his balls, and he's just like, "Give me a fucking egg roll," I hated what happened after, but that scene was done pretty well. So the first half of the movie, I thought, well, not even the first half, but basically up until they got to Raiden's temple, up until our Earthrealm champions got to Raiden's temple. And shortly after that, I thought when they met Raiden and Raiden just went through, like, told Cole, "You're not ready for this fight mentally. Like, you're just not, you're not ready for it." Told Sonya, "You're not worthy. You don't even have a marking." And then Kano was like, "Well, what about me? Do me." And then he started running his mouth, and Raiden just electrocuted him and dropped him down. And he wakes up, 30 seconds later, like, "Whoa, what happened?" I thought that was really, really great. Nice touch, because we never really seen that side of Raiden, kind of like a dick side, which I thought was great. Liu Kang, honestly, the first time around, I hated Liu Kang. There's just certain things he does that just kind of like, I'm like, why? Like, I don't know what it was. It just he kind of just came off the wrong way to me. And the way he plays with his red sash constantly, every time he's like walking, he throws it behind him or moves it or whatever. That kind of bothered me too. But I did appreciate the actor's work with a lot of his hands, like especially when he's doing the fireballs and stuff. I really appreciated all of that. And I mean, the guy is just dude's fucking jacked. Like, dude is chiseled. So I appreciated it more on the second time around. Kung Lao was probably the second best part of this movie, because Kung Lao was just a beast. From the second he teleports in, he does the ground teleport from the game, and saves Liu Kang's ass to the point where he's just like, Kano's like, "Who the fuck is this guy?" And he's like, "I am Kung Lao, descendant of the great Kung Lao." He's like, "I don't know who the fuck that is either." And then at that moment, you see Liu Kang like kind of looks down. He's like, "Yeah, I ain't shit compared to him. Like, I'm nothing." So even Liu Kang knew he wasn't, as good as Kung Lao. And like I said, Kung Lao was just a badass. I enjoyed certain moments of the training scenes, especially where Liu Kang was spamming the sweep, which is straight out of the video games. I definitely appreciated that. Even Kano's jump was like something you see in a video game, so I appreciate the attention to detail in that. But the fighting they were doing in their training was kind of weak. You know, there's a lot of punches and just not what I would expect. But again, if they're training, they're not really trying to hurt each other, even though Kung Lao did slice open Cole's arm. Just, you know, it was just kind of out there. And then we meet more of our Outworld champions, Natara and General Raiko, who are like minor characters. I think they were in one game each, maybe 2 games. Then we see Cabal, and we see the shadow of Goro. But Cabal had probably more lines in this movie than he's had in all Mortal Kombat games combined. Like, he said more in this movie than he said ever. Nataro and Raiko were a great touch for, you know, the fans of the series, but they were definitely expendable, and you kind of knew that. And then Cabal, I felt like they were really trying to make him like Deadpool, and sometimes when he's talking and the head movements, it didn't seem to mesh well, in my opinion. But he almost seemed like a combination of Rocket Raccoon from the Guardians of the Galaxy and Deadpool. And like I said, it just it kind of came off the wrong way at times to me personally. He sounded like a guy from, I'm probably gonna piss some people off, but like New Jersey, maybe had that kind of Jersey accent. I don't know. It maybe it's because he was wearing a mask and you couldn't actually see his mouth moving. Like, at least with Deadpool, you could see the chin moving and then the eyes, you know, react to certain things. We got none of that from Cabal, but Cabal was a pretty dope. You know, in the movie when he'd do his speed, he'd do his run. But like I mentioned earlier, we didn't get to see a lot from Cabal because a lot of his fight scenes were cut up with other fight scenes. So what we did see him was pretty dope. So, like I said, we get the montage, we get the introduction of the Arcana and all that bullshit. But Cole can't get his Arcana, so he's sent home to his family. At this moment, the Outworld has invaded Raiden's temple, and then they invade again after Cabal convinces Kano to switch sides, which, you know, kind of knew was coming. It had to. That's just who Kano is. But then we get like essentially our major fight scenes, and we get Goro going after Cole. And you're going to tell me that the guy who hasn't won a single fight in this entire movie couldn't even beat up Kano is now going to beat and kill Goro. Granted, he finds his Arcana, which, you know, was kind of lame because he's basically Takahashi Takeda's from Mortal Kombat 10. In fact, he has almost the exact same weapons that Takahashi Takeda uses, and similar armor. So why they just didn't use Takahashi Takeda? And Takeda is a descendant of Scorpion, so, you know, they didn't really create a new character. They just kind of changed a character. So whatever. But he finds his Arcana when his family is in danger and beats the shit out of Goro, kills him brutally. You know, cuts his hand off and splits him up the gut, and his intestines fall out and shit. Like, you're telling me this guy who hasn't beat anybody, hasn't beat Kano, didn't win a UFC fight, is now gonna defeat the 9-time Mortal Kombat champion? Why? How? Why? Is this Warner Brothers' idea? You know, I know Warner Brothers wanted a new character. Did they want this new character to be the ultimate badass, to be the Rey from Star Wars of the Mortal Kombat series? Because that's basically what he is. You know, we found out that Rey, spoilers, was the descendant of, you know, the senator.
Say my name.
Who was...
Do it.
the fuck is his name? Anyway, not talking about Star Wars. But basically, that's who he's the descendant of Scorpion. He's the descendant of someone great. So because he's the descendant of someone great, he should be great. No. And he wasn't the main focus of this movie, so I'm fine with, whatever, but the fact that he just, I don't want to say easily beat Goro, because he didn't easily beat Goro. He got his ass beat for a little bit. But once he got his powers, it was pretty easy for him. The 9-time Mortal Kombat champion. And then he goes and fights Mileena, and he needs help fighting Mileena. And also with Mileena, the thing about her, like, they did not do Mileena good at all. First of all, they should have kept her mouth covered until the fight with Cole, where he knocks, and he could have knocked it off, and then we see her get angry and she yells and her mouth splits and all that stuff. But there's a scene where they first attack Raiden's temple, and she attacks Sonya Blade, stabs her with her sai. She licks the sai, tastes the blood, and she's like, "You're not a champion. You're not worthy," and then just basically walks away from her. Mileena is fucking crazy. She wouldn't walk away from killing anybody. She'd kill a monk. She would kill somebody for being in her way, let alone fighting them. So, like I said, they just did not do Mileena any justice at all. They used her powers, yes, but not in the sense of Mileena that from the video game. The sais were there, but some of her fighting scenes weren't that great. If they're going to do Katana, they definitely need to bring Sissy Stringer back to play Katana, since she played Mileena. Since Mileena is a clone of Katana mixed with Tarkatan blood, and it'd be great to see Baraka, the Tarkatans in the next movie, and we probably will. But it's just you have this guy who's supposed to be the chosen one and defeats Goro, but then needs help from Sonya Blade, who miraculously, after beating Kano and earning her dragon logo, miraculously knows how to use her powers without any kind of training that everybody else had to go through. Within a second, basically, maybe 30 seconds, we go from the scene where she's fighting Kano to back to Cole fighting Mileena. Sonya comes running in. He's like, "A little help." She blasts a hole through Mileena. 30 more minutes, flesh some things out. And then you have Jax, who his arcana is taking those little rinky-dink skeleton robot arms they gave him and making them more robotic. What? Kano gets a laser eye. Jax gets robot arms. Sonya gets orbs shot from her hands. It doesn't make any sense. You know what would have made sense? Is if Liu Kang, Kung Lao, and Cole Young already had these abilities built into the system because of who they are and how they trained. Because of their lineage, their family heritage, how they've been trained, cheese, energy, all that. Kano shouldn't have been worthy of an arcana. He should have had to go get a cybernetic enhancement implanted into his head for the laser. Jax should have felt the same way, that he was worthless, and gone and got cybernetic enhancements himself for his arms. Sonya Blade should have gone and got some high-tech weaponry to use, because she didn't have a marking, and then that whole cybernetic thing with Kano and Jax could have set up the cybernetic programming used by the Lin Kuei in future movies for Cyrax and Sector. You're setting things up for future movies, minimally. You're not just flat out putting it in our face like you did a lot of these things, but you're hinting at it subliminally. But that's not what they did. They chose to make them magical powers, which to me makes absolutely no sense, because as I mentioned before, Sub-Zero had his powers before he killed Scorpion. How did he have his powers? I don't fucking know. Because if you only have the powers after you get the logo and you get your Arcana, whatever. What was Goro's Arcana? An extra pair of arms? What's Melina's Arcana? The fucking razor teeth? Like, again, because we didn't get any explanation of our villains, we have no idea how those Arcanas affect them and how they're going to affect people in the future. And everybody has to have a fucking Arcana now. Johnny Cage, who was teased at the end, he has to have an Arcana. Every person for the future. Shang Tsung, fucking Noob Saibot, Quan Chi. Does Shang Tsung? I mean Shao Kahn. Does Shang Tsung have Arcana? Is that the ordeal here? Like I said, we only saw him use one power, and that was to steal Kung Lao's soul, which fucking pissed me off because like I said, he was the second best part of this movie, and they killed Kano and Kung Lao, the two great part of this movies. And they Shang Tsung steals his soul after he does the best fatality in the whole movie, where he splits Natara in half with his fucking hat, which he does in the game, and then they kill him. Like, why? And nobody's really ever dead in these Mortal Kombat movies. It's entirely possible they could be brought back. Even in the games, they killed Liu Kang and Kung Lao and brought them back as revenants or whatever they were. So it's entirely possible he could be brought back. But I don't know. You could definitely tell that they were setting things up for the next movie. As I mentioned before, the director said he didn't want to do, or maybe I mentioned it before, I don't know, I can't remember now. But he didn't want to do what is done before. He didn't want to do a tournament. So we got kind of a pre-tournament. So therefore we got kind of a prequel movie. The tournament never actually happened. So how the fuck does that go for the 10th tournament? Our champion is dead. Goro's dead. He's the 9-time Mortal Kombat champion. He's dead. I mean, at the end, Shang Tsung did, whisk him up in the black smoke. He also took Sub-Zero too, but he didn't take Melina, Raiko, or Nataro. So, I don't know what that means. We do know Sub-Zero comes back as Noob Saibot, but Goro never comes back after he's defeated. So, I don't know what their plans are with that. But we get to the point where it is Cole Young versus Sub-Zero, and then we finally get the return of Hanzo Hisashi as Scorpion. Scorpion was basically MacGuffin in this movie. He's in the beginning and then he's in the end. That's it. There's a couple flashes here and there throughout the movie for Cole, but other than that, he's not in the movie that much at all. But the fight scene between him and Sub-Zero was really badass. Great choreography. Like I said, the callback with the spear. Now that he's Sub-Zero, he leans into it, but he catches it this time, doesn't let it cut him. So many video game moments with like the when Sub-Zero did the ice clone. Like, I was like, it was so quick though, but I was just like, fuck yeah, I saw that, I noticed that. That's awesome. I wish they would have maybe gave that more detail, but so many great moments in that fight scene. But what's going on the whole time with Cole Young? He's punching ice. Trying to save his family. I get that. But he's punching ice. What? our guy who just killed Goro and is now a badass because I got this baton and this blade and this armor and I'm a badass now. I'm going to go punch ice. Okay. Then, as we get down towards the end of the fight, we see behind Sub-Zero remove his armor and he's wearing all black. Definitely a tease for Noob Saibot, who he will most likely play in the next, however many movies. I think he signed on for 4 more movies. Joe Taslim has, and like I said, Joe Taslim did a great job, so I'm definitely looking forward to seeing more from him. He was in Raid Redemption, which I didn't realize. Raid Redemption is, if you want to see great martial arts and great fight scenes, go watch Raid Redemption. That is a fucking amazing movie. We live in a time where there's movies like Ong Bak, The Protector, Raid Redemption, all these great martial arts movies, and then you get something like this, and the fight scenes just don't compare at all, unfortunately. So, and I did really, really enjoy when Scorpion took off his mask and did the fire breath of Toasty, and you start to see the skull come out, and I really enjoyed that. I thought that was a great touch. However, every time he talked, he had to take his mask off. I thought that was super annoying. It's like 30 seconds later, 30 seconds later, like uh I just thought that was kind of annoying. But I did enjoy the movie overall. Like I said earlier, I gave it a C minus. I just really wish they would have fleshed out more things, fleshed out the villains, fleshed out the invasion angle, why they were doing what they were doing, and just gave this movie more time. Unfortunately, like I said, though, they planned this to be a series of movies, trilogy, 4 movies. I don't know. Maybe they wanted to make it Fast and Furious, fucking 10 movies down the line. I don't know. But I just wish they would plan for one movie at a time, get this movie done, make it successful, then do your next movie. Sure, you can have little bits and pieces. Marvel did. Marvel in the first Iron Man had Nick Fury in the end credit scene, but that was the only tease. We got a ton of teases in this movie. Or it was the only major tease. There were other, subliminal little teases here and there, but it was the only major tease. So I just hope in the future that they learn from their mistakes. Don't, he didn't want to do what's been done before. How many times has the tournament been done? There's only so many live action adaptations of Mortal Kombat, and in movies, there's only 2 prior to this, other than the animated film, which I haven't seen yet, unfortunately, and I need to go see. If it's on HBO Max, I'll look it up and definitely have to watch it. But the Scorpion animated film. But in movies, there's only 2 other movies before this one, and then there's been a YouTube live action series, and then a TV live action series. How many times has the tournament been done? It's not like, Spider-Man with Uncle Ben dying, or Batman with his fucking parents getting killed in every movie of Batman, or Superman and the planet of Krypton being exploded and all that nonsense. It's not like that where it's been beaten into our heads 100 times over. We know, we get it. Move on. It's different. We haven't really seen a tournament happen. And in that same fact, we haven't seen good guys fight good guys. We did in this movie kind of with the training, but it wasn't in that tournament sense, because that happens in the game. There's times where, Jax and Johnny Cage butt heads, and so they fight. Which, like I said, Johnny Cage wasn't in this movie. They teased him for the next movie, which means all along they planned to do a sequel. And within days, Warner Brothers greenlit the sequel, which is what they do nowadays, because Wonder Woman 84, that trash of a movie, was greenlit within days of being released on HBO Max for a 3rd movie. It's just what Warner Brothers does these days. They're like, hey, you know what? It had mild success. You get another movie. I guess they're just throwing around money. But that is my review for the Mortal Kombat Reboot 2021 version. How did you guys enjoy the movie? What were your thoughts on the Arcana, on the fight scenes, on the overall movie? If you guys have anything to add, please let me know down in the comments. Let me know your thoughts on the movie if you enjoyed it. And I hope my opinions didn't sway you from enjoying it, because like I said, I did enjoy the movie the second time I watched it. It just wasn't what I expected the first time I watched it. And I didn't go in expecting it to be great, expecting it to be a Marvel movie, expecting it to be Oscar-winning performances and the best fight scenes I've ever seen and the best story ever told. I expected a good story, good fight scenes, and unfortunately, I didn't get quite that. But like I said, let me know your guys' thoughts on the movie. That is going to do it for this video, guys. If you are new here and you've lasted this long in this video, then you should definitely subscribe and hit that notification bell so you can be notified every time I upload a video. If you enjoy this video, and if you've been sitting here this long, you should definitely be enjoying this video. Go ahead and drop it a like. I would greatly appreciate that. With all that said and done, guys, my name is DJ CS. Have a good one. And as always, don't forget to tip your DJ. Later, dudes.